And it's a regular occurrence where it's their first makeover, they will start to cry, which is a pain in the butt because we have to then have the tissues ready to dab it so it
Right,
doesn't ruin the
right.
makeup. But
I
it's
could have finished your sentence. I knew exactly what you were going to
right,
say. They started crying.
yeah,
Yep.
and it's tears. Mostly, it's tears of joy.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of My Girl Life podcast. We have a very exciting and interesting guest today, David Burrows, who is the co-owner of the infamous Glamour Boutique online retail store for crossdressers. The Glamour Boutique has been a fixture in our community for as long as I can remember, something like 25 years. David can clarify that here in just a minute. And I want to welcome you to the show, David.
Thank you, Maddie. That's very kind. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Great. David, can you describe in your words what exactly the Glamour Boutique is?
Yeah, the Glamour Boutique is a resource for crossdressers, a retail resource, both online and brick and mortar presence for crossdressers and transgender girls. We're based in northern New Jersey, approximately 40 minutes from Manhattan. And I actually purchased the online business from a trailblazer in the early days of the marketplace, John Warner, who
And
was
when
based
was
in
that?
Massachusetts.
Approximately what year was that?
Yeah, that was 2007. Glamour Boutique started back in the mid 90s.
Okay, so I was fairly
Yeah,
accurate. Yeah, it's been around
yeah,
forever.
yeah, yeah. And so, yes, when I arrived in this country 18 years ago, and I was looking to do something similar to what I'd done in London for the while I was working in London. And I found a listing for John's business. And at that time, he wanted to sell the whole business, which comprised of the online, his brick and mortar store in Massachusetts, and his brick and mortar presence also in Las Vegas. I was not interested in the store side of it, only because in my previous job, part of my remit in a business was brick and mortar retail. And that was very tricky because it was spread out. And when you have cash businesses, you inevitably, from time to time, have issues. And usually I was the person that had to go and sort it out. And North America is such a vast continent. I didn't want to have to keep getting on a plane every now and again to either go up to Massachusetts or go down to Vegas. So
Yeah,
I
very
didn't want that.
understandable.
Right. So I was only interested in the online. And John said, well, I want someone to buy the whole thing. So we agreed to kind of disagree and we parted ways. But then 6 months later, he came back to me and said, I'll sell the online to you, because he couldn't find someone who wanted to buy it all, which understandably, just because it was so spread out.
So were you just looking for a business to purchase in
I was
general, or why? How did you stumble across the cross-dressing specifically?
right. So in my previous job for 18 years before arriving in this country, I was a director of one of the largest LGBTQ plus businesses, certainly in the UK and in Europe. And it was a mixed business of different brands that were both publishing in hard copy and also online, and also retail. And the retail was direct mail catalogs, and then the infancy of online e-commerce. Plus, also we had what we called lifestyle stores, which were stores specific to the marketplace that we served, which was quite innovative at the time. They weren't adult stores; they were lifestyle stores, but they were
Well, what do you mean by
particularly
lifestyle
focused.
stores?
Right. So they were where I mean, they were skewed primarily to gay men and lesbian women,
So
and they
clubbing type clothes.
clubbing type clothes, but also anything related to it. So,
Okay.
even, you had categories like gift cards, which were specifically made for that marketplace. Things like perfumes and aftershaves and stuff like that, and clothing, lots of clothing, particularly unique branded undergarments, underwear, particularly for the gay male market, things like Aussie bum, which has become much more widespread. So it was niche, but it was particularly skewed towards that marketplace.
Did you have a background in clothing, apparel, retail?
I didn't. My background was in direct marketing, old school sort of, mailing via catalogs. So that was where my expertise, and customer service. And I started in that business just at a customer service level. But then the business, that was at the beginning of the 90s, the business exploded during the 90s. And I quickly became a manager, and then like an area manager. And then after about 8 years, I became a director there in charge of all the commerce side of the business, the commerce and retail side.
Interesting. Well, good. Well, that's a good background for what you got into.
Right. So, yeah, the segue was I was looking to do something similar, but I wanted to do something smaller scale again, because I started in customer service, which is what I love. I love the customer contact myself. And in the other business, although I loved what I did, I became a manager of managers. So I had little customer contact, which is the bit that's my passion.
And when you manage people, their problems become your problems, which can be
absolutely
challenging.
Yeah.
Well, when you purchased this, did you do much market research for the cross-dressing market? How did you know that this could be a viable, sustainable business model?
I mean, I knew,
or did you know?
Right. I mean, you never know 100%, right? So what I did do as much research as you can do, and even at that time, there was even less than what there is now. But my main research was I went up and spent a month with John and his staff in his store up in Massachusetts, where I sat in at the back where the shoe area was. And because I'd made him an offer on the business, but I needed to verify the business, right? And I couldn't afford to employ an accountant to do that. And I do have basic accountancy skills. So I sat at the back and spent 4 weeks, which was mainly to verify the figures, the business figures, that it was a good business to buy. But the other thing, which was actually just as important, was sitting there and watching the customer come into the store and the conversations that went on between staff and the store. That's where it was a deep dive to learn as much as I could and keep my ears open while I was doing the other part. And yeah, so it was.
And that was probably just as valuable as the actual numbers.
It was without that.
More.
Yeah, it's without that, I could have been stymied, because honestly, and to this day, most of our kind of innovations and the advice that we give to our customers and our browsers and our readers through our blog, it all comes from customers. Most of it, does come through online. But one of the reasons why, because originally when we moved here as well and we opened, I still didn't want to do a brick and mortar retail. But people from literally the second week were, because the business started in the basement of my house, because I was I had to buy a house and buy a business in a 2-week period, and I was doing everything on a shoestring. I was also working another job here, so I had some cash flow to pay bills. And so what it meant was I didn't have money to do certain things, but I had to appear really professional as possible and grow exponentially quickly. And so I started in the basement to save money. But from the second week, people were knocking on the door and saying, "Can I come in and try a pair of 4-inch red heels?" And I think on the fourth week, somebody knocked at the door, and my wife shouted down the stairs to the basement and said, "David, you got to come here." And there was this guy who had a big rig parked outside in our residential street, blocking my drive and my neighbor's drive. And he was dressed in dungarees, and he had on a pair of 5-inch heels, and he wanted to come in and get some boobs. And he was lovely, and he didn't know any difference. He just found the address on the website, so he thought, why not? And
I'm going to the store. That's where the store is.
Yeah. So, and then he gave me some great information. I remember, I can't remember explicitly what it was, but I remember he gave me a great tip. And that combined with my wife saying, you've got to get proper premises. We can't keep living like this.
Mm-hmm. And again,
so
the year this is happening is again
2007.
Okay.
2007.
Just for reference. All right, thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So that was we lasted. So that was at the end of the first month, which was I think September. By January, the second week of January, we were moved to our current premises. And then I opened a brick and mortar once we moved here, because not from a revenue stream point of view, although that's very useful. It was mainly because of the learning process. I figured out early on, you got to have customers coming live because they all try on the different products. You get to see what works with what body type. You get to see what shoes run small, which ones run large, which ones are true to size.
Which you would never get from the online store unless somebody gave you very specific feedback.
Right, correct. So for example, in our shoe selection on our website, it tells you if a shoe runs small and how you must size it. Now, if you're a pure online player, you probably will figure that out in the end because you're kind of guessing. Returns. Yeah. So it's I just find that invaluable, and
so is the physical store kind of a loss leader, or is that thriving too?
No. What we find in the store is the average sale in the store is considerably higher than what it is online, because we get people regularly on a weekly basis coming up from DC, Delaware, coming from the farthest edges of Pennsylvania, coming down from New Hampshire, because
are there just no other stores available, or do they really like you and your store and they make an effort?
I'd love to say it was me. I think primarily it's that there's less and less physical stores where you can get everything under one roof. You can, of course, go to, an adult store. You can go to a Macy's and different stores to get different things. But if you want soup to nuts, an outfit from a wig all the way down to shoes, there are very few places where you can go where they know what they're talking about. They know about sizing, and you will get. So
there was one in particular place in Denver here that was like that. And I don't know how else you would have gotten started without having, and the people there were very helpful. And I can see it probably was very similar to the experience of walking into your store.
Yeah, it is, because I think, Maddie, our sweet spot with customers is, in our store anyway, is with people who we call newbies. So they come in and they probably dressed in the past, and often as not, when we get to know them, they tell us that they did in their informative years. But they later in life, when it comes back, their body shape has changed. They don't have a clue about how to size themselves. And usually, the first time they come in, they're very nervous, understandably. So
where else do you get a size 13 shoe?
Right.
Or 12 shoe, female shoe, right?
Yeah. And on the flip side, a good thing is the way that, society's developed, certainly since I arrived in 2007, is that more and more cross-dressers are comfortable with going to regular stores where they know they're not going to be dissed, and they're willing to say,
1,000%.
Right. So that's a good thing, because I think that's a good reflection on society. But when somebody's new to it and they're ultra nervous, often they'll feel we're a safer bet because, we're there's just that, will I be treated well or won't I?
Oh, absolutely.
We tell people, for example, where we are, there is a shopping mall half a mile down the road, which has all the major stores. And I mean, we even take people there if they've never been out shopping before and they want to. We take them on assisted shopping trips so that they can be on Femme or not and go around. But what we teach them not to be afraid, that our, cross-dresser, our money is as good as anyone. So, now and again, you do get someone who meets, unfortunately, the wrong assistant, and they get either wrong information or they get attitude. And I hate that, because it can put someone else ever doing that again.
Yeah, put them right back in the closet.
Right. And shopping on them and shopping for girl stuff, whether you're dressed or not, it should be a joy. It's enjoyable, So now it happens now and again, but not nearly as much as what it did 10 or so years ago. So that's a good thing, and people should get out there and
That's
look
awesome. I had
around.
no idea you guys did that. Um,
Yeah.
David, aside from just clothes, how do you think your store, online and the physical store, has contributed to the cross-dressing community? And you did just state some very important points. Are there any other
Yeah.
ways you think you've contributed to our community in general besides the clothes?
I mean, I think the thing is, we like to think that we're, and although it's a lot to do with the brick and mortar, it is the same with online and people who call us. We like to think that we're a little bit of an oasis for the community, that we're safe, we're discreet, and we're affordable, which is what we've always tried to do. Um, and why I say we're safe and discreet, I mean, you've got to be in an online digital marketplace. That's you've got to be discreet, you've got to be safe. But the other thing is, we like to be contactable, because again, going back to what I was saying, when somebody's new to this, I mean, my wife has difficulty with bra sizing between the different brands. So, what chance does someone who's a new crossdresser have trying to figure it out, right?
Well,
So,
it's so much trial and error. As I look
mhm,
back, um, you know, on my journey, it's a lot of mostly trial and error. Although I got great advice from fellow cross-dressers and my
yep,
genetic women friends.
yes, yep,
But in the beginning, you don't have a lot of that, and it's trial and error, and you spend a lot of money and a lot of time on things that either aren't right or weren't right for you, or you're not going to
yep,
use for very long because you move
yep.
beyond it.
No, absolutely, and you can waste an awful lot of money if and it is always that thing when we meet a customer for the first time, even if they know their sizes, we start off with them and say, "Do you mind? We're just going to take all your measurements and we're going to write them down for you, so that wherever you are, you know what
Mm-hmm.
size to purchase, so that you don't waste your money." So that's how we start with each customer. Yeah, in terms of what else we kind of contribute, we like to think, with all the stuff we do through the blog and through our social media. An interesting thing which we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years is in our brick and mortar store, we see a lot more parents with their non-binary and transgender children coming in to see us. Um, Often as not, they starting off by coming to get
Are they
information.
coming by themselves or with their child?
They're bringing the child with them,
Okay.
and they are looking for two things. One, they're looking for information on things like support groups, because depending on where you live, it's not always easy to find something close to you. And the other thing is basic garments, and usually that's tucking underwear. Because when I talk to the parents, they say that their child they're not happy dressing in female attire, in male attire anymore, but they haven't got to that point where they want to wear obvious female attire. So they're looking for
Mm-hmm.
more non-binary,
A little ambiguous
gender
type
fluid.
clothing.
Yeah, right. So what they'll often do is they'll wear like leggings and just t-shirts to go to school, but they do want to tuck so that there is not an obvious male sign down below. So,
Okay.
but that's been a thing which up until 7 years ago we rarely saw any of that, but now we see more and more of it, which is great.
What do you, yeah, what do you think caused that shift? Because if you
Mm,
want to look at society and politics specifically,
yeah,
it's gotten tougher in the last 7 years.
yeah.
I
Well,
find that an interesting
I think it's
contrast.
no, and I think you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. I think it's because it's so difficult for these parents to find resources. And I find it strange where often the first thing they want is information, and yet they're coming to what is basically a retail business, right?
Well, and maybe because of the last 8 years, they don't feel comfortable asking their neighbor or their friends, which they normally would
For
bounce
sure.
stuff like that off of. What are the kids wearing, dressing? Where are you buying
Right.
your stuff? They may not feel comfortable.
No, and I think you're right. And what's also, when I talk to them, I would say the people that I meet, sometimes as much as a quarter of the people that I do meet, when their child first comes out and tells the family, I'm non-binary or I'm transgender, and they go to discuss it with the school, some of the schools handle it really well and have the resources to help them, but some just don't. And what often happens is, in certain circumstances, the parents have to move to a different school district, which, I mean, can you imagine that upheaval?
Jeez.
That you have to sell your house and move to a completely different district, do the research on if that district is going to have a school which is going to be accepting to your child and going to have the resources to help them. I just find it, and I think that's part of
and
what
the child feels the burden on their shoulders. They're feeling like, this is my fault. This is why we have to do this. That's not a positive thing.
No, it's not. So I think, you're right in what you're saying, because it has become worse. And this is, some of these parents, they are literally, of course, they love their child dearly. And what they're trying to do is help them in tandem find a safe path in life through high school, through hopefully college, and then on to a profession, and have their own life and find their own partner. But you can see they're terrified because they know what's going on in society, that it's horrendous. Anyway,
well, backing up, do you think Caitlyn Jenner had any effect on your business coming out so publicly?
I mean, now and again, yes, we would have customers who would say, the reason why I'm here or the reason why I'm talking to you on the phone is because, of Caitlyn Jenner. I think Caitlyn's not the only one. I think there are others. And I think depending on where you live, if there is a community, over the years that, I've been here in this business, a number of my, it's a minority, but a number of my long-term customers, they have transitioned. And interestingly enough, the ones that I do know personally who have done it, they've been able to do it. I mean, I hesitate to say correctly, but what I mean by that is they've been lucky enough to have the resources because they've had a good job and maybe they're retired or they're coming up to early retirement. They have the financial well-being wherewithal to go and see the right professionals to do it correctly, i.e. the best surgeons, etc. Unfortunately, as we know, not everyone is that fortunate to have that option. And, and they're the people that you become concerned about. That they try and cut corners and they don't do everything correctly with the right mental and emotional support with professionals. It's hard enough out there, but if you're a person in their late 50s and you're financially well off and you decide to transition, doesn't mean it's going to all be, roses and sunlight.
But you stand a much better chance of
right.
happy success.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who worked for us for about 7 years, and it wasn't him, but he had a friend who did transition, who was in her, I think, early 30s. And this is something I've heard before. And literally within 6 months of going back into the workplace to the job, they constructively dismissed her. Now that's not a story that I don't. I've heard that story a number of times before.
Yeah, I have too.
Right,
my friends.
So and that's someone who doesn't have family support because the family, they didn't agree with what she did. And so the only support she has is from cross-dressers or other transgender girls. And, she needs to work. And yet, because of what she's done, certain people and parts of society are holding that against her. And, just everything becomes so hard. And I can only imagine what that does to you emotionally and mentally.
Yeah.
It just must be horrendous. You must totally feel on your own.
Well, so that you offer, obviously you offer far more than just the clothing and the actual items. There's more to it than that. There's guidance and support and consultation, etc. That's awesome. I think that's great that you guys go the extra mile. Back to the products. How do you decide which products to include in your store?
Again, often as not, when it's so where we start is from the products we sell the most of are to do with female shaping, right? So that's boobs and associated products like bras, like adhesives. Then the next area of the body shaping downwards, the waist. So we do lots of compression garments and steel bone corsetry for people who are really large and need to get a considerable reduction in that area. And then, of course, round about the hip and the bum, where, to get a nice hourglass, we may want to add padding. And with that, also compression tucking garments. So that's kind of, I would say, where most people that start shopping with us, whether it's online or whether it's in the store, they're going to start in that area. Now, there are those people who they just like wearing pantyhose under their guy clothes, and they're not interested in having a whole female shape or dressing as a female. It's a sensual thing.
It's a giant spectrum, isn't it?
It is.
You could ask 100 people what they do, and you're going to get probably 80 different answers.
You're
if
so
not 100.
Maddie, you're so right. Honestly, it's a thing that I say to people that know nothing about this community or business. I say it's a niche business, but there are many niches within that niche. And you have to listen to the customer. You can't treat each person the same. And I remember I think in the first month of the business, I had a phone call and I asked questions of this customer, though he was like all the other customers I'd spoken to that week. And it was basically most of the customers were calling in, and it was to do with bra sizing and getting a better female shape. And I remember I started rolling out these stock questions. And the guy just stopped me and said, please, can you just stop right there? Don't take it for granted that I'm like the last customer you spoke to, because I'm not. And then he proceeded to tell me what he was looking for. And he was absolutely right. In this business, you cannot treat everyone the same because everyone is different. They may have some similarities that overlap, but
sure,
our thing and that we talk about in the office here, whether you're on the phone, whether you're doing customer service via email, whether you're working in the store, it's all about let's listen first and find out what the person is looking for. And if they're a little bit fuzzy on that, let's try and help them refine more of exactly what it is they want to do and what they're trying to achieve, and then start to make suggestions. The other thing that we do here, we don't, in my last business, it was a very savvy business, and we did do things like upsell, cross-sell. Now, on the website, there are certain things that are to do with cross-selling. So, for example, on certain breast form pages, it'll tell you may need a bra, and it'll link to a bra, right?
Sure.
But on the phones, and we don't upsell here. What we do is we try to find out what the customer wants, and then we explain to the customer that what we're going to do in our main category is we kind of do it back to front, that a lot of regular retail does it. Rather than starting with a high-end breast form, we start with what our current closeout is, the most affordable option. And we do the same in things like wigs and shaving. And the reason why we do that is the majority of our customers are married. They come from families. This expenditure is part of the family's disposable income, and it's just like, if the person was a golf nut, he's only going to buy so many new golf clubs in a month, because there's other needs on that dollar in the family group. So, and most of our clients, we do have clients that dress they're fortunate enough to dress every day or every week. But the majority of our clients, they don't. They maybe dress 2 or 3 times a year. So I often say, when somebody's starting out and they even do want to look at the high end, I'll say, I'll show you the high end. But how often are you going to be dressing? Maybe twice a year.
David, at least in my experience, a lot of our friends, the first items you buy are not going to be the items that you eventually want down the road.
Correct. So correct. Yeah.
And it may, because you thought they were right and they're not exactly right, or you grow and you want to, especially with the wigs. I've gone through, I don't know how many wig hairstyles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, at the time, the one style was right. The bangs, hide as much as my face as I can.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you get a little more brave and you ditch the bangs. Not that bangs are, not a bad hairstyle. In fact, I still kind of like to put that one on. But yeah, so, spending a ton of money in the very beginning can be risky, because you may not want that style or those things, down the road.
Yeah.
And it's very generous of you to not take advantage of that. I applaud you for that.
It's kind of, I have to say, part of it, Matty, is reverse psychology, right? Because I like, and we all do here, all my coworkers, we like customers that become regular customers. We like building relationships.
Yeah, you're in it for the long term.
Right. It's not the one, I'm not interested in the one-off sell. And another thing that we do here, particularly when people come in the door into the brick and mortar, is, as I said, our sweet spot is new people, is newbies starting out. And sometimes you'll get someone coming in and they have a shopping list. They've gone through the website and they'll have 15 to 20 items on there, going to close to $1,000. When someone is a first timer here, we let them buy 5 items max. And the reason for that is, if we let them buy those 15 to 20 products, they would go home, they'd stop wearing them, playing with them, looking in the mirror, and they'd figure out pretty soon, oh no, I bought the boo. He was right. I should have gone with C cups. I went with double D cups, and it goes on and on. So Maddie, I liken it to, if you move house and you've brought all your old stuff with you, your pictures and your vases and all your knickknacks, and you move into the house on day one and you start banging holes in the wall or drilling to put all your pictures up. If you do that, normally a week later, you find that you made a mistake. I shouldn't have put that picture there. It would look much better on that wall, etc., etc. And it's the same as that. It's, if you let someone, when they're early on, buy a ton of stuff, they will figure out pretty quickly they've, on a lot of the things, bought the wrong things, that the boobs are too big.
Of course.
The shoes, they can't walk in them because they've never walked in heels before, and they wanted to start up with a 5-inch heel. And what will happen is they'll think, I tend to think, they'll think badly of us.
You'll get the blame.
Yeah.
You'll get the blame for selling them too much stuff.
Correct. Yeah. We sold them too much stuff. So we restrict it. They're allowed 5 things. We try to direct them on what those 5 things should be, to give them a basic outfit and basic femme shaping, which then allows them to go home, play with the stuff, buy other stuff from elsewhere, outfits and things, and play with it because they've now got a pleasing shape. And then they can work slowly up from there, but those 5 things they buy, they're keepers. They fit, they give the right shape, and they work underneath clothing, and they're not going to have to throw it away.
Well, it'd be like if you took up golf for the first time and you just went out and bought the best golf clubs and all the accessories, and you realize you're only either going to play once, once a month or every couple months, or, the clubs weren't the right kind, or your friend is using a different kind and you think they're better, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think that's very generous of you. What is the one most popular item?
It is
in the online store.
It is boobs. It's
boobs.
Yeah, boobs. That is it. Closely followed by the tucking garments.
Well, when you say boobs,
Yeah.
would it be just the breast forms, the individuals, or the plate?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is breast forms, but the plates are in there in the mix. What happened was when the breastplates came out, I don't know, 7 or so years ago, everybody jumped on the breastplates because it gives you the option to have instant cleavage, so you can wear, low cuts. You can wear different things that you can't wear with standard breast forms. But what we figured out was within a couple of years, people were going back to breast forms. They keep the breastplate, but particularly where we live and in the southern states, when it's summer, breastplates are hot as hell. They're
I'll bet. I've never worn one.
Yeah, they're silicone, right? So it's non-porous, doesn't breathe. So, what we found, people would tell us, yeah, I can't wear this in the summer because what happens is where the line of the breastplate ends, I get a big sweat mark all the way around my torso. Doesn't look attractive, and it makes my makeup melt because, the high neck goes all wet. So people tend to use, So people tend to use the breastplates for pictures.
Winter. Breastplates are for winter.
Well, they're for winter, and they're for your Flickr pics and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a place for them. They're just not that practical for day to day and going out.
So are you saying I wasted all those years trying to perfect cleavage?
No.
Which has been one of the most challenging parts of this whole journey, and the illusion is how to get good, cleavage without the breastplates.
No,
it's an art.
It is an art, but I do think those girls that use your standard breast forms, but then and not everyone needs to use tape or a cleavage creator underneath the breast form, because some people have enough already. And if and some of the old tricks go down on the band size, so you get a nice pinch going up. But on top of that, if you have basic makeup skills and you can do light and shade with a light contour stick and a dark, I honestly, within 6 feet, I find that much more realistic than I do a breastplate. There's just no doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm just glad my man boobs can be put to good use now.
It's a great thing. I
don't hate them anymore. I love them.
Of course. No, of course. But it's the same thing I try to explain to people that come into the store when they're ripped and they're very thin and they don't have any loose flesh at all. And they say, I want to create cleavage. And then I say, listen, a cleavage creator or tape isn't going to do it on you, I'm afraid. You do need something like
unfortunately, you're in too good a shape.
Yeah. No, but it is. It is. And it's the same with, people who get into wearing corsets to get an hourglass figure. You've got to have some soft flesh there. Again, if you're ripped, a steel bone corset, there's only so much you can do. You're not meant to cinch pure ripped muscle. It's for soft flesh, and that's when you get the results of it. So
well, even women have that issue if they're getting a breast job, a boob enhancement, if they don't have a lot of extra flat skin, or they're I've known some people have just very little extra skin, it becomes a little difficult to stretch it all out that much.
Wow, yeah, that makes complete sense.
What would be like the most memorable piece of feedback you've received from a customer, either
it's
good, bad, or ugly, touching, opened your eyes to something, or just melted your heart?
Yeah, I can't. I thought about this long and hard, and it's not that I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I have to say, we do get a lot of times, we get nice emotional emails and phone calls from people who they live in a part of the country where, we do a lot of shipping to places like Texas, right? Where that's a hard state to live as a crossdresser. There's not a lot there. There is places there, depending on where you live, if you're near a large conurbation. But if you're in the boonies, there's not a lot, and it's very lonely. And, we often, from people like that who live in the parts of the country where they have no support, we're kind of their we become a friend. I sometimes drive my staff mad because I'm an accessible person. And if anyone calls and they ask for me, if I'm with a customer, I say, please have them call back or take the number if they're comfortable with me calling them back. And I always will call back. And a lot of our customers, they phone us at times where they're not looking to order something. They just want to talk to someone. They just want to tell you how good they look in the latest dress they bought. And the reason they're doing that is they don't have anyone else in their friend sphere to do that. And so I take that as a great compliment. Now, in terms of moving, we have two awesome makeup artists here. And without a word of a lie, usually once a month, we will have someone who comes for a professional makeover for the first time ever. And our makeup artists, they make them up, but they put the makeup chair to the side of the mirror, which has all the lights around it. They won't let them see themselves being made up as the process is being done, carried out.
Well, sometimes it can be unnerving because you're like, what are you doing?
Yes.
This looks like a complete mess.
You're absolutely right.
Especially if you're doing contouring or whatever. It looks like you're,
yeah.
you're in the jungle, joining some tribe or something until it gets blended.
Yeah. So they're not allowed to look when it's their first time doing it. And also the makeup artists, and this is their thing, they like a big reveal. And the reason why we do at least once a month, you get someone who, when it comes to the reveal, we ask them to step down from the makeup chair and go to the big full-length mirror. And it's a regular occurrence where it's their first makeover, they will start to cry, which is a pain in the butt because we have to then have the tissues ready to dab it so it doesn't ruin the makeup. But I
could have finished your sentence. I knew exactly what you were going to say. They started crying.
Yeah. Yep. And it's tears. Mostly it's tears of joy because they can't imagine how good they're able to look. And that's down. Of course, there's part of it is the skill of the makeup artist, but part of it is because they're recognizing in themselves that feminine part of themselves. And they've thought about it so long and hard. And then there it is. And sometimes we hear that they look like their mother, they look like a sister, they look like a favorite aunt, and it's so touching when you can bring someone to that realization. It really is.
That reminds me, it's kind of a weird analogy, but I in a previous life I was a songwriter and a producer.
Oh.
And as you're writing a song, you can hear all the instruments. You can hear the final song in your head, right?
Wow.
Especially when you first start doing it and you haven't gone through the process and you've had this idea of what it would sound like. And then you go in the studio and you have very talented people who you communicate what you want, but they end up doing this. And then you listen back and hearing what you were dreaming of inside your head.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar to what they pictured.
Totally.
And wow. It's right there in reflecting in the mirror right back to me.
That makes sense. That makes absolute sense. Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling. I guess I didn't know you guys did makeovers, so tell us really quick about that. And obviously, that's at the physical store.
So we do that at the physical store. Most of I would say about 60-70% of the clients that come to see us for makeovers, they're going out. So we tend to be very busy on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays with makeovers, and then we do have a good number of persons that when they're coming to the tri-state, whether it's on business or to visit family, they'll tie in having a makeover and then wanting to go out. So they'll often call months ahead and they'll say, I'm going to be here this weekend. Is there anything going on? So, we usually know what's going on in the tri-state if there were any events that they can go to. And then we try to make it so that they have the makeover and they can go directly to the event. And then we have those girls who they've never had a makeover before. Sometimes they've never dressed before. And they just want to see what's possible and what it feels like. And so, we transform them. And yeah, to me, I wish I was that. I wish I had that artistic bent that my makeup artists do. I don't. And I wish I did, because I think it's anything in that arena artistically is so talented because you can bring so much joy to people.
Oh, it's magical.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you yourself as a musician, you will know that yourself. And I ride on the coattails of it, but I love it. It's the part of the business. I love the business as a whole. But I love the live customers coming in because you see at first hand what is possible, what we can help them with.
That's a really interesting aspect I did not know. I don't think most of us out here in the community know that about the physical store and how important it is to the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about your website. You sell all kinds of clothing and accessories, etc. And by the way, you can go to Glamour Boutique at www.glamourboutique.com and visit their store. We'll give you all the information towards the end on how to get in touch and access their online store. But you have more than just the apparel. You have a blog.
Yep.
And you have contests, etc. Let's talk about the blog. Who writes your blog articles?
We have different people who write the blog articles. They're all staff members or contributors, people who we know from the community for a long time. And what we tend to do is we'll, in conjunction with we have an agency who helps us with our search engine optimization, i.e. how people go about finding the website and the search engines.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is, on a monthly basis, they'll do a little bit of legwork to see what's current or what people are searching for, what queries they're searching for. And so that often will inform what we're going to write about. So they'll give us subjects, and then we'll come up with the blog titles, and we'll say, you mean something like this? And they'll go, yep. And then we'll go away and we'll write it and hone it. And again, a lot of the stuff also we like to do is we like to incorporate stories about, our readership. So we have a monthly article that is called Eye Candy, and it's the same set of questions that we ask each person. We ask to be an eye candy girl, and they ask some of the questions are kind of fun, some of them are serious, and it just gives us a good rounded picture of this person and how they got to where they are. They're usually people who are, they're certainly not newbies. They're people who they tend to know how to dress, but they've been on a journey to get where they are.
And they have something to offer, and especially the newbies, just listening to others, first of all, knowing you're not the only one, and God bless the internet, because that changed everything.
Right.
Before, everybody thought they were the only one in the entire world putting on a pair of nylons.
Yes, you're so right. So yeah, we find that, we just find that it's people love it because it's real people that are giving themselves up and telling their life story and how they got to be where they are.
Do you have a regular schedule that you put those out, or is it just...
Yeah, we do. So we do what we call a newsletter once a month. It's usually in the third or fourth week of the month, of the calendar month. And we normally, in that newsletter, there will be at least 4 or 5 new articles. And one of those will be the eye candy feature. And then the other articles are usually tips. So they'll concentrate on a subject matter that we find is quite current, that people are asking for online. And so we'll come up with an article that gives the kind of solutions or answers to that, of how you can do something.
Do you ever get any serious pushback on some of your articles, or do you stay pretty, I don't want to use the word vanilla, but non-controversial, or do you like to kind of stir it up once in a while, get some people talking?
We like to get people talking. It's just the one thing I do tend to stray away from, and that has been more and more since, maybe we'll move on to this, I don't know, but since 2016, since our new president who's going to come in when he first came to power, we made it kind of a rule, and it wasn't laid down by me. It was everyone in the office, to try and take stress out of the day-to-day workings, that we wouldn't talk about politics in the office, and we wouldn't promote political beliefs, our political beliefs or others, online. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't stay away from subjects that we think are wrong for our community, because we will stand up and we say we think that's wrong. But we, as I find, because I spend my time talking to customers, I have customers, obviously a lot of customers who are very liberal leaning, but I equally have a lot of
Yep.
people who vote for Mr. Trump. And
I find it surprising that I have no idea what the percentages are.
Yep.
But there's more than I thought that support.
Yep.
That side. And this is a much bigger conversation and not for this interview, but it really makes you think, at least for me, stop and think, what are those people that don't believe what you believe? Where are they coming from, and why do they believe that? And try to understand it a little better. It doesn't mean I want to, sanction what they believe or whatever, but I want to know where they're coming from, because you can't hate half the country.
No.
You can't get rid of, 40% of your friends.
No.
And colleagues and et cetera. I mean, you can, but that's not the life I want to lead. So
no. I think it
does become an interesting balance.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, Maddie. I do, in these current times that we're living with, because otherwise we'll stop talking to our neighbors. We'll stop talking to certain friends. I would stop talking to certain customers. And that's not a way to live life. Most of us, we want to build bridges. We don't want to, make roadblocks. We just don't. I know, it's one of the things that always attracted me to this country is how open people are. And that openness does sometimes mean having hard conversations. That's okay, as long as it doesn't get to, angry people making threats and things. That's where I kind of have to pull the line.
Right.
I can't do that.
Well, and that's the problem. I mean, I think, I don't know, I wasn't paying that much attention prior to 2015, 16.
Yeah.
Was, you could have a conversation and you could just, talk about difference of opinions and policies, but now it goes much deeper than that. It's a personal attack.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just a policy difference. It's just it's a personal thing, and it gets tricky. But you want, I'm finding that with my Girl Life brand is I know where my allegiance is. I know what I believe, but there's a bigger audience, and there's people that I care about that don't think exactly like I do, and I want to talk to them too. So
right,
tricky navigation.
Yes, for all of us. Yep, I agree.
So, are there any future plans in terms of Glamour Boutique and anything in terms of online or physical store or some new business? Or
I'd love to say yes, but I have to say, we're going into 2025 on the back of a new election where any business, and it particularly does affect small businesses like ours, because we don't have the margin to play with that big business does. But with all the talk of tariffs, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with tariffs, but what I do know is it's going to affect businesses like ours. 25% tariffs on product from Mexico, from Canada, 10%, another 10% on product coming out of China. If I go and look on my shelves in the warehouse of where things are made by my distributors and some of my manufacturers, there's a fair portion that comes from those countries. So that means there could be, supply chain issues. And also it could mean that some of the products we won't be selling in 6 months. We'll have to find alternate geographical locations to get an affordable replacement for it, because my customers, they may not want to pay that, because, we would, as we've done in the past when on the last time Mr. Trump was in, when he put in the first lot of tariffs on Chinese things, we absorbed it that time. I couldn't just fully absorb it again. So, we have been, for the past 4 or 5 months, been looking around geographically to find other sources.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's it. It's kind of,
well, you're not the only ones doing that right now.
No, everyone's doing it. And so it's not that our eye is off, kind of new growth and looking for new adventure in the business and commerce. When it's not that, we've just got to sort out we've got to see what happens first, the first month or two, and see if these tariffs do come into place. And then we've got to keep, at the same time, we're trying to find alternatives. And once that's all settled down, which it will do, which I would think by mid next year, then we can start to be more expansionist again. But yeah, at the moment, it feels like running a business is you're a little bit doing it on the defense as opposed to the offense, which is the more fun part, is the offense.
Exactly. Well, speaking of the fun part, and then we'll wrap up here in just a few. Tell us about your famous contest that you have.
Oh yeah, so we started the contest back in, I think the first year was 2009. And we did it because at the time I had three good friends who, two of them were customers, and one of them there were like these three girls that they did everything together. They were like joined at the hip. And the other thing was they were all three of them, they were gorgeous. And I couldn't believe that they used to come by here quite regularly and spend some time just chatting to us when they were on their way to
just wanted to be
event.
Social. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were so sweet. And then one of them said, and it was the oldest one out of the three of them. And at the time, her name was Elizabeth. They called her Betty. And she was stunning. When she told me she was in her, I think, mid to late 60s, I nearly fell off my chair. I could not believe it. But it was one of those girls who she kept herself in good shape, both by what she ate and she had a regular workout regime, not crazy, but just to keep herself in trim. And she looked divine, had a divine shape, helped that, she'd been dressing for like 40 years and her makeup skills were top drawer. They were so good. Anyway, so Betty said, you know something I think you should do? She said, I think you should do a picture contest. Because on the one hand, for those of us who, think we're gorgeous, it'll stroke our egos. But for those girls who would never dream of showing their picture online, and for those who think they're the only person who cross-dresses, it'll give them some kind of hope and something to look up to. And she was so right. So we did one that year. And I remember we did the judging in-house. And it was the most stressful thing I'd ever had, because what we found was people would enter, and then people who I knew, whether it was online or via email or phones, they'd call in trying to put subtle pressure on me to make sure they made it into the top 10. I mean, it was funny on the one hand, but on the other, I just found it too much to deal with. So were they the original pioneering cross-dressing lobbyists? Yeah, probably. So at the end of that year, and what we did was, so at the end of that year, we got the three girls back, Betty and her two friends back, and we spoke about it. And we said, well, we did the contest. It was great. This is who won. And they thought it was fabulous. And I said, listen, the only slight downside of it was I did find that people were trying to, put pressure on us in the office to give them more credence with their pictures. I said, so I don't want to do that again. I said, if we do it next year, will you three be the judges? And they jumped at it. They say, absolutely. So the next year, they judged it. It was fabulous. We had them judge it a year after that. And then I started, by that time, I was, talking more and more to people further afield in the country. And I thought, well, this is crazy because, you get people from different parts of the country who are your customers and they read the blog. Why don't we try and set out to have a panel of judges who are from all over the country? And so ever since then, we do. We've always had a minimum of 5 judges. I think this year we've got 8. And the people that we know, we trust in their taste implicitly and their impartialness, which is a big part. We ask them not to divulge to anyone that they know or anyone in the community that they are a judge, so that they don't have what happened to us happen to them. And we did have up until I think it was 2-3 years ago, what we called our senior judge was a girl called Carolyn Olson, who was based out of California. And if you Google her, you'll find her. She wrote some books, which you can still purchase, I think, off Amazon. And Carolyn was one of those people. My first mentor in the business was John Warner, who I bought the business from. And then I started to have mentors who were girls who had been around a lot, who were in the community. And Carolyn became one of those. And never met her in person, but we had a long-standing friendship online and by phone. And I loved her dearly. Unfortunately, she passed away 3 years ago from cancer.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a real loss. But she was, for years, almost, I think about 8 years, she was our senior judge. And all the innovations, all the new innovations that we came up with the contest, they always came from Carolyn. She was just so spot on with everything she did, and she was impeccable. And she had great advice for the other judges. So, yeah, that was a real loss.
I would guess that those have to be your biggest promotion efforts of everything you do, no?
I think they're
giving you the most exposure and bringing people to the store.
Well, I think what they do is they give us exposure to people who don't know we exist or don't know we're there. And the way I look at it is, I don't look at something like the contest as I do paid ads on Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
So paid ads on Google, we drill down the data and we only will bid on things where we know what the click-through rate is going to be, and then we know what the conversion rate is going to be so that we make X number of dollars off each dollar spent.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't look at it like that. We look at it just as PR, that people are going to see the store as they're entering the contest. And hopefully somewhere down the line, when they think, oh, I need a new pair of boobs. Oh, I remember when I entered the contest for GB, why don't I go and look at them? So that's as much as we look at it, and we know it does. We know it brings tons of traffic in, But
it's earned media. You don't have to pay for. Well, it's costing you some, to run the thing, administrate the thing. But it's earned media. It's free once you launch it,
right? And it is the thing that we find in the immediate that is the value of it is the content, because we can use that content throughout the blog ongoing. And, we tons of the eye candy girls come from the contest. So it's just a great way of creating more content. And that, you always need content. If you're going to have a blog, right? And like you with your podcast, you need content. You got to have a pipeline of it. So that is our main pipeline for content of the blog.
And you'll never run out of cross-dressers that want to be seen in a photograph or online.
Thank God.
One of my favorite jokes is, how many cross-dressers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
God.
It takes two, one to screw in the light bulb and one to take a picture.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Just hits home.
I love that.
Well, we'll wrap up here. David, is there anything else you wanted to mention or add here before we cut loose?
No, the only thing I would say is, just be careful out there, girls. We are living in strange times, and I hope that all the bluster, but, I have to say that, even since prior to the election, now and again, we get stupid phone calls where people say stupid things, nasty things down the line. Now and again, we get silly emails. Most of the time, I discount it. There have been times in the past where I have filed a police report because I find it's hate speech. And I feel threatened, and I feel threatened for my employees and my customers. Yeah. But so just be careful out there, girls. That's all I would say. And I heartily go along with what you say. We should be about building bridges and not, building walls. And I think if we all do that and we're smart enough, we'll be okay.
Well, I think you guys are doing a good job of that. And again, everybody, you can reach Glamour Boutique at www.glamourboutique.com. David, do you guys have a Cyber Monday sale going on, or
We have a Black
Anything like
Friday.
that?
We have a Black Friday sale that goes through to Monday, where there's
Okay.
up to 50% off what we currently have, and that will probably go on until the end of next week, where those deals will still be in place.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to visit their website, check out those deals. And David, you have a great holiday.
Thank you.
We've got the holidays coming up, so people, if you want to do some shopping, make sure you visit the store and see if there's something that you might like for yourself or one of your loved ones. And again, thank you, David. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Bless you, Matty. I appreciate it. You have an awesome holiday too. Take care.
All right, take care.